Hello, folks. Good to see you. I'm smiling. I don't know if you're smiling or not, if you've been watching the news and so forth and so on, but I want to welcome you to our show. And I'm a financial advisor. You know that I'm in Owings Mills. My number here is 410 902 0464. And, we're going to talk about some of the financial terms, the financial products, and so forth as education. I've been doing educational seminars for I can't even tell you, probably 25 years. So I'm going to share some of that information, some of my seminar information with you, and then I'm going to talk about the products that we specialize in, and so forth. Here's my first question. I was thinking about this when I was driving to the post office today. What are you going to say today after the last couple of days with the tariffs and so forth? The true believers, and I'm one of those, believe that this is a great change for America. It's time for us to take care of ourselves and straighten out the tariffs that we've been taking advantage of for many years. There's others that are worried that the market's going to go down, stay down, and that we're going into a recession. I'm more optimistic. I don't really believe that. But in any case, you have your opinion and your view, and you're entitled to that, and so forth and so on. But what is it doing to retirement accounts? Because that is the question that many people, especially people that listen to and watch our show, are most concerned with. And so what I have to tell you, it depends on the kind of retirement investments you have. If your retirement investments are mostly mutual funds, and I'm going to talk about income and so forth, anything in the market that goes down, depending on how long it stays down and so forth and so on, means that you are losing money. Now you say, well, I don't lose money until I sell. Yes, well, that's true technically, but the point is that if you're trying to get growth out of your retirement account and you're not taking income now, okay, you're reducing your ability to reach your goals if there's downturns in the market. And that's always true. It's always true. And this is what 401k plans are all about. It was about 1977, I think, that the ERISA law was passed that took us pretty much away from pensions and created the mutual fund kind of 401ks that, that of course benefit the market a great deal. And the big question is, do they really benefit the individual? Well, depending on the market. You can have a great market and it could do you a lot of good. And I've seen that happen to a lot of people. But I've also seen people that had to retire at times when the market was down and they weren't able to optimize the amount of money that they were going to get unless they waited. And who knows when it was going to, correct itself to the point where they could take sufficient funds out of the plan. I've seen a lot of people go back to work. I've seen people extend their working career and so forth and so on. I've seen a lot of things like that, varying kinds of responses to what's going on in the market. So the market isn't an all-time, always solution. The fact of the matter is that it was the market that wanted, the ERISA law more than anybody else, and there were a lot of influence peddlers that did influence Congress in creating the ERISA law, which allowed the formation of things like 401ks and TSPs and 403bs and the like. Okay, and one of the problems is that people really don't watch those accounts. They don't really watch them. I mean, I have people, they'll call me and ask me what I think about their account, which tells me, and I know that most of the time they're not watching it. And when people come to visit me, I tell them, bring all your statements, anything you've got. And invariably, I shouldn't say invariably, much of the time, you find they're not even looking at the statements. So here's their money, and here's what they're going to live on. Here's what they're going to depend on in retirement, and they're not watching the game. You have to wonder about that. And I say to you, if you're doing that, then I have to wonder, what you're thinking. It's time for you to really pay attention to those things and get some advice on them and get some help on them. When they passed the ERISA law, they said that everybody in a plan had to get or was entitled to see an advisor once a year. And some companies, confirmed to that, expectation, but many of them didn't. So you got an awful lot of people that aren't getting any advice and don't know when it's time to change investments within the plan. I'll ask people, how many times a year can you change in your plan? And a lot of people don't even know that answer. So that's the first thing you want to know. You want to know, when you can actually change. And the other thing is that you want to be contributing on a regular basis so that you get dollar cost averaging. What does that mean? If you're buying it high one month and it goes down, you're buying it the next month low. So you're averaging the money that's going in, and that helps you balance it out, and you come out better off that way. If you only buy it when it's low, first of all, it's not going to happen. You're not going to only buy it when it's low because nobody can time the market. Nobody can time the market. So if you just do it regularly, that's the best approach you can take. And the amounts that you can put in, most people will put money into their plans up until a match that the company is offering. They offer some kind of a match, so they'll put the money into a match. That's fine. But ask what the limits are if you want to put more money in. Ask what the limits are. Remember, the more money you put into a plan, the more money you'll have, hopefully. But also, it means that you could be lowering your marginal rate on your taxes. So, hey, that's all good. So ask the plan administrator or HR, whoever it is that oversees, that benefit, what's the max you can put into the plan? And a lot of people aren't even conscious of that because they just think about, what's the max as opposed to the amount that they could actually put in. So you want to look at that and find that out. All right. So the number one item that goes in, of course, into plans at work, whatever the plan is, are mutual funds. And in fact, that's almost all that you're going to see all day. Although plans are entitled to put other products in today, many plans. In fact, they can use our favorite products with the fixed index annuities. Some of them have that. Not many, but some do. And some have unit investment trusts. Some do, most don't. So most of it is IRA. Most of it is mutual funds. Now, when you get into mutual funds, you say, well, there's classes in mutual funds. There's A shares, which can be advisory shares, and in a plan, 401k or whatever, they are usually advisory funds. So that's the lowest cost fund. They're charging you, maybe they're charging 1%. Okay, but here's what they're not telling you. The cost to you, the sales charge might be 1%, okay? But inside the funds, there could be other charges. The management of those funds, inside the funds. Before they sell the fund to you, they have the fund managers inside that are doing the work, and so they have to pay them. So that you have costs inside the funds. So that's one thing you want to think about. And there's other products that have multiple funds inside of them. Okay, where it's not just one fund. There's a series of funds inside of a fund. So you have a series of rates, of charges, fees. So the whole thing is to know what your fees are, at least know what they are. You can't escape the fees if you're in a plan. You might be able to buy some products within the plan that are lower fees, but my advice is don't make decisions based just on fees. It's what you get out of it, what the return is, what's the consistency of the return, and so forth and so on. And the other thing is you have to know what your exits are. For instance, what happens if the market is just it's a really tough market, it looks like it's going to be a tough market for some time. Where can you put your money, park your money, so you can consider it safer? You can't say safe because, remember, anything inside that plan is an investment. And nobody can say to you an investment is safe. If it's on the market, it cannot be considered safe. Okay? And you have no insurance against it failing because it's not safe. You have some insurance against theft and malfeasance. Okay, so that's what the insurance is. Within the securities, but there is no insurance against loss because of the market. No insurance against loss. So be aware of that. It's not necessarily lifetime income unless it works out that way. But the market isn't guaranteed. There is no insurance against the market, failing you individually, and all the people that go down with you. Okay, so that's a little bit about mutual funds. Now that's I covered the money that goes into 401ks, etc. Now, what other mutual funds are there? You've got the A shares that can be advisory shares, which basically is what they use inside of a 401k. That's the lowest cost mutual funds within that family of funds. The lowest cost mutual funds are the advisory shares, which is basically A shares. All right, and then you have B shares. I don't want to talk about that very much. Just stay away from them. They have a lot of fees inside of B shares. In fact, oftentimes they'll ask an advisor, the overseers, FINRA and so forth, how do you justify selling B shares? I mean, they're not popular anymore. Used to be a long time ago, B shares were considered okay. I don't know a lot of people that deal in B shares anymore. Okay, C shares will charge you a continuing fee, and you never get over it. It's like 2% a year for the rest of the time that you have it. Whereas the A share can also do that depending on the situation. Money under management, is typically considered the least expensive way to own investments. That's where let's say you take $100,000, which might be the minimum with a particular brokerage house, and let's say they charge you 1%, which is a very typical number. So 1% on $1 million would be $10,000 a year, and 100,000, of course, would be 1,000. They don't like to do 100,000, obviously, or they might charge more than 1% to do 100,000. And what is that? That is a situation where a portfolio of investments is created somewhat tailored to your needs, somewhat tailored. But in many cases, it's an off the shelf portfolio that seems to fit pretty well with you. Now, if you get enough money in there, for instance, if you are dealing with $1 million or more, you can get a portfolio that really is customized to you, but still adjustable and changeable. In that instance, you're paying, 1% of $1 million is 10,000, so you can figure that one out. Now they might reduce it if you got it up to the very wealthy, of course, where you're dealing with a lot of money. They probably are going to perform the services for less than 1%, and you're going to get some additional services along with it. So that's kind of an overview. But for most of us that are working and so forth and so on, we're back to the mutual funds that we talked about that are going into a 401k. Typically, money under management is not a 401k anyway. Money under management is personal, what we call non-qualified money. It's not IRA money. Okay, it's savings and so forth. It's before tax money and so forth and so on. Now, what about keeping it tax deferred? Well, obviously, if it's in a plan, it is tax deferred in a 401k, etc. It's tax deferred until you start taking money out of it. Okay, now you could transfer money out of it into an IRA, and that's where all money from a 401k has to go, unless you're simply going to consume the money. So it has to go into an IRA in order to stay tax deferred. Every account that we roll over from a 401k or any plan at all, it goes into an IRA. In our case, we're putting it into fixed index annuities, which creates a private pension plan where you're going to get lifetime income. Lifetime income is guaranteed and safe. That's a big deal, for retirement money. The people that are concerned about the market today are not the people that have their money in that kind of a product, because they don't have to worry about it. It's going to be there. They're going to get their check every month and so forth, just like in a pension. It is really like a private pension. Okay, so that's the way it is as far as rolling over is concerned. Now, you could be rolling it over to an IRA that is in the market. You can leave it with the IRA in many cases, or with the 401k. Many companies will allow you to leave it there, or leave it there for a period of time, and so forth and so on. So you make a series of choices, but get some advice on it. Get some advice on what the options are, and weigh them yourself. See how you feel about it. A lot of people will talk it over with their family or spouse and so forth and so on when they've got a 401k to roll over. if they don't need the income now, it's a wholly different situation than if they need the income now. And if they need the income now, then they've got to put the money in something like we're talking about, the fixed index, where you can start immediate income. And you can get the same amount of money for your entire life and your spouse's life. So that's a rather simple kind of thing. If I tell you that you're going to get $25,000 a year, or whatever, $50,000, whatever it is, out of that plan, that's what you're going to get, and you're always going to get as long as you're around, and then your spouse is going to get as long as they're around, and whatever's left in the contract will go to your beneficiaries. So that's the way our products work. And happy to talk to you about that. Safest way to go. Got people that I've been with for many years that say, I wish I had met you before, and so forth. And a lot of people coming in, out of the rain when the market's not doing very well and they're very concerned, or they're reaching the age where they're anticipating retirement is around the corner, and, they want to know the money's going to be there. Just like we worry about Social Security. We want to know if the money's going to be there. And we want to know if the money we're getting out of our plans at work, is that money going to be there long enough for us to live our life in somewhat of comfort, and so forth. So yeah, these are things we can talk about. And I haven't mentioned Social Security again today, but let me finish on the side of the 401ks and so forth. So money comes out, it goes into an IRA. No matter what you're going to do, that's where it goes first. All qualified money. Okay, what does that mean? Well, 401ks and 403bs and TSBs, that's what we call qualified money, meaning the IRS code qualifies it as a plan for workers, people that earn money, professionals and people in factories and truck drivers and doctors and lawyers and so forth and so on. If they have a plan at work, it typically will be a 401k or a plan like that. Then, of course, like for instance, the fire departments and some of the first responders will also have drop accounts. Well, drop account. I mean, I have rolled over from the fire department individuals that had drop accounts for a couple $100,000. That is qualified money. It has to go into an IRA just the way a 401k does, and so on. So there's other plans that mimic a 401k, but they're qualified and they have to go into an IRA. And so that's something to be very aware of. Now, rarely does somebody make a mistake and not put it into an IRA. But if that were to happen, then they're facing a very difficult situation. They have 60 days to get that money into an IRA. From the moment it came out of the plan, they've got to get it into an IRA before they are in their what we call constructive receipt kicks in, and the IRS wants all the taxes on all that money. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to pay all the taxes on all the money they've accumulated in the plan. The way you pay the taxes typically, so it's rolled over to an IRA. Let's say it's with us, and let's say it goes into one of our private pension plans, and you're getting money every month, okay? And you're having taxes taken out each month. You may get to a point where I don't want the taxes taken out this year because I've got a bunch of money coming in that's going to raise my marginal rate, my tax rates. So you stop it. You can stop it periodically if you need to. Otherwise, the money's going to come in, and that's when you pay the taxes. When it goes into your bank account so that you can use it, that's when it gets taxed. That's the tax year for you. But there's no taxable event putting the money into the IRA. Okay, except in the instance that I've already mentioned, where for some reason the time elapses over 60 days, takes more than 60 days, which should never happen anyway. But that's an onerous penalty to have to pay when you have to actually pay all the taxes on all that money. Now, what about the future? You get older and so forth and so on. Now, when you reach 73 years old, all the money that is in the IRAs that you've taken, you've created these IRAs. Okay, so all that money has to start coming out for the benefit of the IRS. And what we call required minimum distributions. Required minimum distributions. We're forced to take out a certain amount of money every year, and that money is taxed. Now, to make it clear, there's no misunderstanding. I'm not saying that is taxed. I'm saying that money that comes out has to be taxed. Okay? That's the way that works. Okay, What if you get income with one of our plans? The income you receive will always be more than what you're required to take out. So in that instance, you don't have to concern yourself about the required minimum distributions because you're already taking more than that out. You see how that works? Now, I'll be happy to review that when anybody, I do this all the time. So it's easy for me to talk about these things, but I don't expect anybody to remember all of these things. In our classes, you've got a book. You got a book like this book, and people are making notes all the time. That's great. But the thing is that if you come and see me, we can review all of these things. And if you work with me, of course, you're gonna see all this in writing anyway. So that's part of what you want to think about. But the RMDs don't kick in until you're 73. Used to be 70 and a half, and they kept moving it up. That's because of longevity. We're all living longer, hopefully. And as a consequence, they let you hold on to all your money a little longer. But then you're going to start having it come out. Now, let's go back to the IRA. Because the IRA, the regular traditional IRA, okay, what's that all about? That is a way of putting money away every year, besides the 401k. Forget about the work site plan. So you can put money, almost everybody can put money into a traditional IRA. Then that's where it grows tax deferred. And what's in the IRA is all of the things I mentioned. It can be. It could be the annuities that we use. And we have a lot of money, but people put money into every year into an IRA. It can be anything. It can be stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It could be money under management. It could be unit investment trusts. It could be a whole series of different things. It could be a self-directed IRA, which is a special category I'm not going to get into today. But there's a whole series of things. You could have commodities in it. You could have gold, as a matter of fact. So there's a lot of different things that can go into the IRA, okay? So there's limits every year, and it changes all the time. So as an example, it might be $7,000 or $7,500 a year for people, over 59 and a half. It might be less for people under 59 and a half. So that's an IRA. Now, what about a Roth IRA? What is a Roth IRA? Well, a guy here in Maryland actually started the Roth IRA, and that is an IRA where the money going into it is after tax, okay? Is after tax. So that money goes in, and it grows the same way, depending on the investment. It operates the same as a traditional IRA, but the point is that when the money starts to come out, you don't pay any money, period. Okay, you don't pay any money. So you don't pay any taxes. Now there's some rules, like you have to hold it over 59 and a half, and you have to have the first Roth, be at least 5 years old before you can get the benefits of the rules of the Roth. Okay, that's clear enough. In any case, I can review all of these things with you. And, and we can, every detail, you write some notes down. If I'm talking too fast, just put one word down and ask me what I meant by that. But all of those things are things that should be considered and be aware of, and so forth and so on. And let's see. What about if you don't use the IRA? What if instead you're simply saving money? Okay, you're saving money, it's in bank accounts and so forth, and you figure you'll use that to help yourself in as far as retirement is concerned. Well, the problem with that one is that you're paying the taxes every year on the growth. You're paying the taxes on any kind of income that you do take from it. But so interest and growth, therein is where you're going to pay taxes every year. Okay, so it's still going to be used ultimately for retirement, probably. But that's not growing tax deferred. To grow tax deferred, it has to be in a plan of some kind, either an IRA or 401k or whatever, or it has to be an annuity. And so again, one of the values of the kinds of products that we use is they all grow tax deferred. All grow tax deferred. I've tried to cover a lot of material today, and I never get to cover as much as I want to. I want you to know that again, that when the market fluctuates and vibrates, that's when people start paying attention to their investments. And that's when I try to help people more, because there are more people calling me, and it's a great time to look at the things that we're offering, because right now there's earnings available, pay rates available that we have never had before. I'm going to give you an example. So let's say that you're 70 years old. We can get you 8.15% on your money. That's $8,150 a year for $100,000. That's $8,150 a year for $1,000. So you can multiply. You got $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for retirement. You can figure it out. What you could get, lifetime. Okay. And other ages produce other money, of course. If you're 65 years old, right now you can get $7,530, 7.5% on your money for life. Never goes away, as long as you're around, as long as your spouse is around, and so forth. And the balance left goes to your beneficiaries. So those things I want you to think about. Remember my number, 410-902-0464. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to help you. I hope you'll come in and see me. God bless you, and I'll hope to talk to you again next week. Thank you.